There is a great deal of hypocrisy from time to time in these debates. But I'll say one thing to you. I'll say it deliberately to this Parliament. I will never, ever support a people swap where you can send a 13-year-old child unaccompanied to a country without supervision.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
It'll be over my dead body. How dare people?
Profession. Outside the press club, things weren't improving either.
Ask any question you want.
We just got it.
Well,
you just put a bowl of soup in our lap after you've spoken, after you've taken questions.
Yeah, well, I want you to focus on the rest of the policy and not just savings. The rest
So
of the
you don't
policy.
want us to focus
I want
on
you
the
to cover
savings and
everything.
Your leader was in the House of Representatives. He said Joe Hockey is going
Here it
to
is.
release the details.
Here it is.
He's misled the Parliament. It's laughable, isn't it?
It's all there.
Back inside, finance spokesman Andrew.
And he didn't deliver one.
Therefore, do you think it's inevitable that politicians need to lie to get elected? And do you think that an opposition that was truly truthful would ever win an election?
No, I don't think you have to lie to get elected.
Can I just ask you, do you still maintain that no direct promises were broken in the lead-up to this budget?
Well, yes, and I'll say why. For example, we said, number one, we would stop the boats. And we have stopped the boats, right? We have stopped the boats. And we are...
Well, what about public broadcasters, Mr Abbott? Another soft target, the ABC and SBS in the firing line.
I trust everyone actually listened to what Joe Hockey has said last week and again this week. No cuts to education, no cuts to health, no change to pensions, no change to the GST, and no cuts to the ABC
It's fixing
or
the budget,
SBS.
and that's what we're doing.
That was a question about promises, and we've got another question on that subject. It's from Tyler McAnally.
Prior to the election, the Prime Minister promised that a coalition government would deliver no cuts to education, no cuts to health, no cuts to pensions, no changes to the GST, and no cuts to the ABC or SBS. How can you then defend the budget you delivered last week, which basically went against everything you promised to deliver when elected?
Tyler, we have to do what is right. Now, what we're doing is we're increasing education funding substantially over the next 3 years, which is the 4 years that we promised to do it in, right? So it was this year. If they go to get medication, they also have a PBS co-payment, which is something Labor introduced in 1990 and which has continued to help to make the pharmaceutical benefit scheme sustainable.
Just a very quick question on that. This co-payment you've agreed is effectively a tax on people going to the doctor. Is that a broken promise, since you said there would be no taxes without an election?
Well, I don't accept. It's a payment. Well, you can call it a tax. You can call it whatever
a
you
tax.
want.
You admitted it was a tax.
No, I didn't actually. And the fact is, you know, it is a payment. But it comes out of a pocket. It comes out of someone's pocket, a taxpayer's pocket.
Effectively a tax.
Well, whatever you want, Tony. Given that the $7, $2 goes to the doctor, I don't know doctors in that situation were receiving taxes. But your call, you want to call it a tax, you can call it anything you want. You can call it a rabbit. I don't mind. You can call it whatever you want. But it's a tax.
The question is, if it's a tax, as you seem to agree that it actually is, then is it a broken promise when you said you wouldn't raise any taxes without going to an election?
We didn't say we wouldn't raise any taxes. That's absurd because we went to the last election.
Performance now then at the National Press Club. You got a bit of a bagging in the media for it, but let's have a listen to part of that.
You've repeatedly said in recent weeks that you could get the budget back to surplus earlier. I want to go to accusations against you of double counting.
Well, Andrew, when the other mob give you questions, you should challenge them on the status of it. I mean, this is, can I say to you, our numbers stack up, our $52 billion stacks up from last year, right? Our numbers stack up, and that you could have asked that question at any time over the last 12 months if you thought there was double counting. There was no double counting. Our numbers are accurate and we stand by those numbers at a point of time.
Were you saying in your answer that there is no double counting?
I would say to you, we stand by our numbers, Peter. As simple as that.
Double counting.
Well, no, there's no. From our perspective, we stand by our numbers. We stand by our numbers and we stand by our record, because it is the Liberals that deliver surpluses. It's the Liberals that deliver.
Did you have the figures audited?
I've said that before. You're asking for the technical definition of audit. That's the game. I know, Peter, what the game is. I'm not going to go down that path. We stand by our numbers.
So, Mark, that was an unusually sort of passionate exchange, wasn't it?
Passionate, yes. Passionate, but pretty content-free, most of it. From what I could gather, I wasn't actually at that press club lunch, but there was a fair bit of hostility in the room, it seems, because, once again, the opposition has fronted up to the post-budget address of the National Press Club and not come up with anything in the way of detail. Now, you know, there can be plenty of arguments about what's wise politics here, but if you are talking about the numbers, then you need to be able to defend them, and he didn't really do much of a job. Yeah.
Look, I thought it was interesting that his speech didn't do the same rhetorical thing that Tony Abbott has been doing on carbon tax. He obviously actively chose not to do that. Now, Joe Hockey reckons that speech was meant to be about the budget, and, you know, he's complaining that people aren't focusing on the fact that he was talking about the budget. It was a chronically dull speech, so it didn't cut through on the budget. It didn't have any numbers in it, and he ended up in a barney over double counting in a bit of an unconvincing way, I have to say.
Maybe that's the job that Malcolm Turnbull will set his sights on.
I think that is if he can't be leader, I think he'd rather be shadow treasurer. So I think that's all mixed up in what's happening at the moment, or at least that's what a lot of people in the Liberal Party think is going on. I mean, obviously, look, Malcolm is a hugely talented person and very intelligent, and he can be a good salesman, and I think he's chafing in the job that he's in. So if he can't be leader, I think he'd rather be treasurer or shadow treasurer.
He's actually the best advocate in the Parliament. If it comes to advocating a particular policy, he's the best salesman there.
Except he hasn't sunk the NBN. Is that because his heart's not in it?
Well, I don't know. I think he's put up some fairly solid arguments on the specifics of it. It's a big idea, the NBN, and a lot of people are. I think it's inherently popular, and that's possibly why.
And the other problem he's got is that by the time they get into government, it's going to be in place, or it's certainly going to be in place in a number of sites.
Armidale.
So that makes it, well, you know, Tasmanian Armidale, sure, but it's harder to unscramble, isn't it, if it's already underway? And
Student anger at the $250 a year fee, the government calls it an administrative charge, spilled over on the Griffith University campus in Brisbane today.
March up there, occupy the building.
They did just that, swarming through the campus and then shoving security guards aside to enter the main building.
Come on, everyone, go!
Once inside, the students roamed through the corridors, chanting their demands. And they literally smashed their way into administration offices. Student leaders say the Brisbane demonstration is just a taste of things to come. They met with Education Minister Susan Ryan in Canberra this afternoon demanding an end to the fees, and she refused.
We will continue to go out onto the streets and to protest and actively encourage the public to support us in our campaign for free education.
Senator Ryan said the government had sympathy for the students, but
they should have sympathy with many sectors of the community who are worse off than them.
Peter Harvey, Canberra.